Welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. I'm Aaron Robbins with Intrinsic First. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. Ready to dive into the world of leadership? Let's get started.
But the definition of trust is the volitional act of accepting the responsibility for it going wrong, or that it's you have to be willing to be vulnerable.
Right.
And the sense of being vulnerable is predicated on the person's capacity to be truthful, or that there's been truth in the past. I mean, it has to be. I'm not going to trust you if in the past you have violated that trust.
Right.
So if in the early days when people first accept trust or accept, there's an interesting study with firefighters, forestry fires, and they would expect people coming from other parts of the country to help them fight fires be qualified to do things that they were qualified to do and that they believe would happen in the behaviors of others.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you build truth into that experience? Well, I mean, how could I say, well, you're qualified? You know? And so the question of qualification of firefighters became really important when they were switching teams and getting teams to help them fight fires that they'd never known before. So the willingness to trust affectively is really important. And we just have to take a breath and say, well, okay, he was qualified in Montana.
Yeah, but there's also like in a service like that, there's this. It's almost like the military, where like you're out there and you depend on one another, and it's like life or death in many situations when you get into that fire. So there's almost like this camaraderie that's built over time through your training, through the norms that are established through all firehouses. And so knowing that you've been to this, I don't call it a rite of passage, but you've been to this certain amount of training, and that helps build that trust, I believe.
Yes, I was really saying that trust involves also truth.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so if you
But that system allows you, because there's so much on the line, to speak your truth. If something's not going right, you can be vulnerable and actually that.
Well, so take the election, right?
That's
right, because that's where you started.
That's right.
Yeah,
is we've got Trump, who's been convicted of multiple felonies. He's been impeached multiple times. There's all these facts. So do you think people are just ignoring those truths?
I do. I think people don't have any clue what he's really saying, and he doesn't either. And they trust in it because for reasons I can't understand.
Well, it's definitely emotional.
Yeah, it's emotional. There's emotion that's there, that they're getting confused with what he's saying, what they're feeling, and what they're experiencing.
Well, let's go. I was watching the CNN this morning, and they were talking about a woman who had just been convicted of and sentenced to 9 years in prison for trying to for lying she was trying to falsify records and stop the voting of the electorate in a certain way, and she got convicted, and she's totally still says no, it was stolen, and and she's going with the line that Trump's been saying for, and of course what happened was, and did you watch the debate? The vice president?
I saw the highlights of it. Yeah.
Well, at the end, I thought that Walz was really taking it in the ear, because he was just not polished, and he's rough and he's hard, but at the end he said, and by the way, do do you believe that the
election was stolen, right?
Yeah, election
Yep.
was stolen? And he immediately said, "I'm sorry, I'm going into the future, and I'm more interested in."
And then his line was really good. Yeah, I saw that.
And
That's
he
the highlight
said,
I saw.
"Yeah," and he said that's something kind of a lie.
He said that's a. Oh my goodness! He said that's the biggest damnation of
Yes,
no answer.
yes. But the
He
point
didn't
I'm
answer,
making
but,
is that's going to cause. He's going to be running around right up until the election. People are going to be asking him, "Do you think the election was stolen?" And he's going to have to avoid that, just like he did with the freaking number of eating. They're eating the dogs.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
kind of
that whole
stuff.
thing was just a distraction, and I think that's one of Trump's biggest moves is to distract with something so outrageous. That
But I'm
people have
coming
to talk
back
about
to
it.
how does the MAGA group, the people who are, no matter what he does, is still sees no
Bad.
nothing important in his behavior, nothing fundamentally wrong in his behavior. And I keep looking at it and saying, well, where is the truth in what he's saying? If the truth is absolutely clear that he's lying, as an example of losing the electric, and he keeps saying, no, it was stolen from me, blah, blah. How can you then turn around and trust him or anybody
So
who
is that
does
your question then? Like, how are the followers Trump, the MAGA? How are they following somebody with no truth?
That's right.
Yeah, but you bring up a really good question. Like, how do you, there's no truth to what he's saying. It's
I just think it's selective. It's no different than like, my kids when they're trying to find something and it's like literally right in front of them and they just don't see it. Right?
Mhm.
Is there almost, whether it's conscious or subconscious, they're just not seeing all those things. It's just going right by them, and they're only focusing on the whatever either manipulated or just their own version of the truth.
yeah. So is it a lie if you believe it not to be? Right. I mean, that from their perspective, they don't believe they're.
Well, that's the difference between perception and
Let's go. Wait,
objectivity.
let's keep what we're talking about somewhat bounded by saying, what is trust?
Mhm.
And it's a volitional act to accept being emotionally vulnerable to the promises of someone else. A volitional act. So first of all, it's
choice, autonomy.
It's choice, yeah.
Right.
And so that in and of itself is so. Can I get you to do something I want you to do, and you don't, and trust me? Probably, and if you're rational, you wouldn't do that. So there has to be some quality of truthfulness or verifiable. I mean, to volitionally accept the responsibility of being vulnerable to the promises of somebody else. There has to be some truth in what the person is saying. Otherwise, you're just.
But I think to all those followers, those MAGA supporters, I don't know. I mean, do they believe it's true though? Like what he's saying, do they believe the election was stolen? Like, do they truly, genuinely believe that? Because what Trump and his other people have done around him is totally vilify the media, and you can't believe anything that you hear.
Or it doesn't have to be the media. You vilify or
anybody,
anything
right.
said.
And so if you believe Trump to speak truth, and he says everyone's lying to you, and I'm the one that's
only one that's not.
I'm the one telling you the truth, then they're going to believe it. And so, but man, there's just so much overwhelming evidence that that's not true. But then to your point, well, maybe they're just selective hearing and they just don't see it, like like your kids, where they just genuinely don't see reality. I don't know. It blows, because we're talking millions of people across the country. We're not talking about just people that are socially, economically challenged. I mean, there's some affluent people, and maybe their interests are different, but there's like lawyers, there's doctors, there's all kinds of people that believe Trump. So it's almost like going down the cult, rabbit hole to figure out why do people fall in with cults, and they fall in a cult.
Oh, cult.
Yeah, because again, in that situation, you get all kinds of walks of life that can get subjected to believing in a cult and getting trapped. So I don't know the psychology behind all that to really go into that, but it's fascinating though. But I think, isn't truth then just a perception also? Could it be?
All truth is perception.
Yeah.
But let's be really clear.
Mm-hmm.
I would accept something as being true if 99.9% of the situations or circumstances happens that way. For example, water boils at something, I don't know what, 100 degrees of centigrade. And most times that happens, I'm going to think that's true. So the phenomena that I'm seeing is connected with the assertion that somebody else made.
Now you're using logic.
That's because you're an academic.
Yeah, but you're using logic, though. No.
No,
it's
for
true.
real.
No, but
an academic is primed to think about things.
He's already throwing. He's freaking my. I'm going to murder you.
No, but
that's because I'm an academic. No, it's not.
No,
I'm not saying I'm not either.
I don't have to be an academic to believe that water.
No, but you're using logic, though, right? You're like it's.
Same thing with logic. I mean,
but what I'm saying is that people that are following this line are not necessarily using logic, but their emotions. They're. Somebody
told me, and I like them.
Yeah, I'm so infatuated.
Feels right.
Like, I've seen focus groups talk about Trump and how they think he's almost like a messiah. Like he's like whatever he says. They're so infatuated with his charisma. Like what he says, I trust him. That's a very emotional response, and that's when you try and take logic against emotion, you're going to miss. So,
you understand that you're denying the criteria
yes.
on the basis that you got an exception. Some schmuck who's saying I'm making an emotional decision.
But they might not, if it's an emotional decision, they might not acknowledge it as emotion. They might acknowledge it as truth.
I don't care what they're
That's like their truth. Yeah, it's tough. So it reminds me of this, like, because we're trying to argue this in a box, but Trump and emotion, it's outside the box, and that's why we're missing each other, like missing the whole connection between MAGA supporters and everybody else, because they're outside the box. They're not like we have a clearly defined box that we're making these arguments, and I don't think that they're inside that box. So we're not having the same conversation.
So because they're not inside that box, what I'm saying is not true?
Yeah, they don't buy it.
Or you're just saying that.
Wait, let's go back.
Wait.
Stay with the proposition that his election was stolen. Let's just start with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, there's a certain amount of veracity in that to the state I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
You call it logic, but I would call it a certain amount of repetitious, clear instance of observation over all those. How many courts through the
60?
60, 60, and there's not
fixed.
one.
They're all fixed. No, see, but let's go back to boiling water at 100 degrees, right? That's not always true.
Oh, you're going to go with the atmospheric pressure.
That's a hole I just found.
That's an exception.
But I can take that exception and I could put a bunch of emotion behind it. And I tell you,
a single exception is not proof.
See, you're in that box again.
No,
you're defining the rules. I don't.
Well, I'm not defining the rules. I'm defining the terms we're talking about.
It's frustrating. I know. I get you.
But isn't it that they're not?
But it's
using
perception.
Proof in their judgments or perceptions.
Physical, observational judgments, independent of me and my opinion.
They're not, because they don't know. I mean, it's human nature to try and when you have an incomplete story, we're going to naturally.
Are we saying okay because he's 78 and he doesn't want to be the oldest president? He's not. He says, "I'm now. I would. That's not true. I was born before. I'm not 78. I'm 71." Just like
I identify as a.
I would be just horrified to know how many people, but I'll bet some people would start believing him.
Right.
Well, never mind what other people would do for just a minute.
Let's just talk about wrong. Everybody lied.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it, but I just found
that's
that
why
out.
I keep saying that when we talk about trust, we have to talk about truth. We have to talk about the proof that's necessary for that to be asserted and reliable over time.
Right, but I think the difference is, do you have to have proof for someone to feel that it's a truth?
No, of course not.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
You tell me you love me, and I go, F you too now.
Damn right.
I don't give a what. You went to Las Vegas without me.
Man, we're going to have to bleep a bunch of this.
You took Taylor. That's even worse. No, I'm just
You wouldn't have liked it. It was too busy.
huh?
Those long days, Joe.
I know it was, bro.
Loud music. Actually, we didn't go to New
We
York.
didn't go out really.
You didn't even go to Las Vegas.
We
You
did on
just told
Wednesday.
me.
Went to the Chandelier Club
shoot.
and I had that weird Szechuan pepper flower or Szechuan flower.
Yeah,
I found them on Amazon. It's $4 for the seeds. I'm gonna grow them in my
All right,
backyard.
right on.
It's called the toothache flower.
Oh,
Oh, they and you eat them and it keeps you from having toothaches?
yeah.
Sure. I don't know.
So this guy at the bar, and it was
It was a drink.
yeah, it was a drink, and they put
yeah,
a
This
Really
is
good deal. It's only
grass-
like $23
Sure.
Grasshopper.
for Vegas. I think that's a good deal.
but they put this nice little flower bud, and it's a Szechuan flower,
Yeah.
Called a Szechuan flower.
and you're supposed to take a sip,
It's dried.
and then yeah, it's dried. Then you eat this flower,
You
this
chew it
bud,
up in your mouth.
and then you drink again, almost like a tequila shot. I guess,
And
whatever.
what's the purpose for that?
This-
Well-
it's got something in it that makes your whole mouth feel tingly.
Like
like Pop
you ever
Rocks?
had Pop Rocks?
Yeah.
No,
Pop Rocks?
No, I've never had them.
No,
Oh,
we're
we
gonna
gotta
have to
get
go
some
get
Pop- some Pop Rocks.
There was no such
Pop
thing.
Rocks.
How
What is
like
it?
that? How you like that?
What's in Pop Rocks? Is it CO2 or something?
I have no idea.
So it makes this Pop Rocks. You put them in
yeah,
your mouth and
it's
they
just
just kind of
with
explode.
bubbles,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, then you
like
drink
Super Rice
soda,
Krispies.
it's even better.
Oh, really?
It gets even more active.
Oh, I don't know. But it
Yeah.
feels like your whole mouth's just like popping and tingling. It's a really weird feeling. So yeah, I could imagine maybe it's a numbing
Let's
agent. That helps
let's
your
corral
teeth.
this conversation.
I think
just
we're
a minute.
right on track.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
You do.
Can I give you an example
You
of
said
like
Vegas.
can I give you an example? I'm going to give you an example of like in the box, out of the box kind of which is I think so that you've heard of the prisoner's dilemma,
Mhm.
right? So the idea is that, two criminals get caught and they go and they get separated and then they start getting interrogated.
Mhm.
And the question is, do they snitch on their partner or do they keep quiet?
Mhm.
Okay. Or do they both snitch, right?
Yeah,
And
and
so-
if neither snitch,
They get the best deal, but that's not the best outcome. So in game theory,
Individually.
the dominant theory is for both of them to snitch. And so
Or would snitch.
they should snitch but then it doesn't give them the best outcome. So that's why it's called a prisoner's dilemma. Where the prisoner's dilemma doesn't work is when there's some external force outside of this box where they don't snitch at all. So the example of that would be like organized crime. So there's no way you're going to snitch on me, because if you snitch on me, then
You're
our
gonna-
mob boss Dre over here will
kill us both.
kill
anyways.
you both or kill your family, whatever it is, right? So because of that external rule comes into play, then we're not playing the game the cops are playing. So we don't snitch, and it defies the actual logical rationale behind game theory, because there's some external factor, and that's what I'm saying.
Meaning you're incorrectly defining the boundaries of the
Correct. And I
rule
think
set.
what's happening with MAGA and the MAGA supporters and all the way Democrats try and argue this case is that we're closely in this box that they're not operating in. And it's through emotion, through some other whatever deal, whatever they're hearing, whatever conspiracy theory they subscribe to. But that's why we're missing each other. And that's what I think is what's happening. And I think the people in power, Republicans that are really forcing this, they have an ulterior motive that the blue collar MAGA supporter doesn't know about. They're doing the same thing for different reasons, And so to create this divide down at the lower class level is exactly what they want. Unfortunately, people down that level don't see the power that they're kind of
Giving away.
yeah. So since we're talking conspiracy theory, this is something I'm throwing you. The conspiracy theory is now that Trump wants to get elected so he doesn't go to jail. Within a month, he's gonna
Change.
to JD Vance, and then JD Vance will run it through the Heritage Foundation and get everything they want and start to turn into a fascist state for power.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I find is pretty interesting. And I'm not one to subscribe to conspiracy theories. So when I hear something like that, it's like I don't know if it's going to happen or not. So, but it's interesting to hear like different thoughts and what.
Well, I do think that what you really have is Banyan in the background.
Mhm. 100%.
Trying to he's an anarchist, and he's trying to break down the idea of a democracy, because the democracies they will always break down into when what was it when the barbarians at the gate in Rome You know, they had a Senate, but what do you think they did when when they saw oh my God, look outside the gates and there's thousands of barbarians about to overthrow Rome? What do you think they did? They gave the leadership to a general, and he'd go beat the shit out of the barbarians, and then he passes back the mantle to the Senate.
Right.
I guess the point I'm making is that when things get rough, you can't have a democracy in a sense, a true democracy, because there's so many different points of view that nothing is going to make it reasonable, except to go out there. Thou shalt not kill. This I'm going to. Yeah. It's just, I guess the point I'm making is that the conditions on the outside of the group, which was the point you were making, are not right, or they're not. They don't allow for a possibility that somebody's got to make the decision.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to follow. And it's a little bit like the discussion we had coming in. He was saying that you don't have to be what was it? You have to be a follower to be a good leader.
Yeah, in order to be a good leader, you have to be a follower. We had this similar conversation, but we went a little bit different. It was really good. And that statement kind of, and it's all, yeah, I had a hard time with that because I felt like by stating that you're relinquishing your agency. That's where we kind of went down that road.
Yeah.
And I thought it was more important to understand your role and your responsibility in that situation, and then act accordingly. And then I think you brought up a really good point of how that happens through being an acceptor or controller. And we went down that road to say that we're saying to be a good leader,
you have to recognize the wisdom in being an acceptor.
Acceptor. And I like that word a lot better than follower.
Well, we're defining controller as someone who acts on their environment, tries to change it to meet their inner needs, versus accepting what the environment gives you and using it to meet your inner needs. That definition set well with you.
Did, yeah. We're going back to the election and all that. I think MAGA supporters and everyone else are just playing a different game, and I think it's hard to really get everyone in the same box.
They may not. They may not be playing. They might be just pawns in a larger,
sure.
a larger
scheme.
No, I was going to say in a larger perspective that unfortunately they're giving up their agency.
Yeah,
they really are.
And once you do that, what happens when you give up your agency? Then I mean,
yeah, you might as well just hand it over to a.
Yeah, I don't. I think some of it, like the stuff where Klemp what's his name?
Who?
From the Daily Show.
Oh, Jordan Klepper.
Klepper, yeah. I mean, some of the people he finds, I mean, that's just pure emotion, ignorance. I don't want to acknowledge any actual truth, but I think there's a lot of people that are looking at this somewhat, I don't know if intellectual is the right word, but they're trying to look at the facts. But like, I just, when I hear those quote facts, it's like, it doesn't sound like the right facts to me, like the stuff that Trump says. And then, he's got this way of exaggerating everything, right?
And they know that. So they can excuse it. So if I'm a really successful businessman and I've got lots of money, and my thing is I don't want to pay taxes. And if I think Trump's going to give me that, he can be a wash and do whatever he wants. I don't care what he can say. As long as you keep my taxes, low, I'm happy.
But I'm talking like, he says something like, every immigrant that's coming into the United States is a prisoner who is a murderer or a rapist, right? Well, that's not true at all. In fact, our crime rates are going down over the last 10 years or something. And then, but Venezuela had something where some, criminals made it in here or something. So it's distorting the facts. But what's real? What's truth? What is it?
I don't care. I just don't want my taxes lower. You see what I'm saying? Like,
listen, I'm going to fix it so you don't have to pay another tax.
Or I'm very religious.
I'm going to put you in jail.
Yeah. Or I'm very religious. And I think abortions should be abolished, right? You say whatever you want as long as you give me what I'm looking for. So they could be like a one topic voter, and Trump can give me what I want. You say whatever. I don't trust Trump with my kid, but if he can give me lower taxes, then I'm happy. So I think a lot of that is where these voters are. But on Jordan's show, though, he probably does a bunch of interviews, and he just puts the most ridiculous one up there. So
you can't take that as objective fact either. But that's what I'm saying is, talking to others that are trying to look at this from a more intellectual perspective, there's all these issues of pro-life, pro-choice, and immigration and childcare stuff. But when I hear Trump talking about it, it's all hedging. He doesn't actually say anything. Well, what's your childcare plan? Well, let me tell you about, I'm going to save money on energy.
What's your healthcare plan?
He talks about how he doesn't like Tesla or he does. Elon Musk is a great, he diverges off, and then it's like, okay, so how are you going to help reduce the cost of childcare? All I heard was you're going to drop our electric bills in half, which I don't necessarily believe. But again, I think there's people that are just looking at it from an emotional perspective. And there's probably people looking at it from one item. I don't care all these other crazy stuff, but I just want pro-life and he's pro-life or something, right? But I think there's a lot of people that are looking at all these different items, but they're kind of seeing what they want to see, or they're only seeing the quote facts that they want to see. And it's either exaggerated or...
So think about why we do what we do, right? So a lot of the situation, it could be just social pressure, or they were raised a Republican, a staunch Republican, and that's
undeveloped values.
Yes. And so for a lot of people, I think that's part of the game too. I mean, you could be in the most red state, and to say, I've been in a room when I first went in the military, I remember going in boot camp, and there's about 300 or 400 recruits sitting in this one room. And there's some chief talking to everybody and whatever he was saying. But one thing I remember him saying was, raise your hand if you're a Democrat. There's like 300 or 400 recruits, like 18, 19-year-olds in this one big room. I consider myself a Democrat coming out of high school, but I didn't raise my hand. And there might have been like less than 10 people raising their hand in that room. This is like in 92. So again,
social pressure.
Yeah. And so that's a big deal if you're talking about like you're in a red state and everyone's all about, the right to bear arms and go out and, whatever they want to, their values are. And now you're going to say you're going to vote as a Democrat? No way. So I think that a lot of it's that.
Well, I think it's unfortunately fruitless to try to figure out why somebody believes in Trump. It's absolutely, because sometimes you could argue it's rational, not emotional, it could be rational. That, for me, is not the issue. The issue is, are they able to distinguish between certain, I can't use the word truth, distinguish between certain realities and not. Mm-hmm. And what are those? How are those?
Yeah. Everyone's got a different perception of what's real around them.
Yes, and one of the things that bothers me more than anything else is that another effective strategy in some people's minds is to give you an exception to something. When you say, well, he's just lied. He just told one untruth. He lied once. And that doesn't mean that he's a liar. My first response is, really, let's talk about the number of times around one, not just one issue, but the number of issues. And that it's not only, it's for self-preservation and gain. It's not only,
right.
So getting, sometimes a negative proof is more powerful than a positive proof. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because you can take I give you I give you a rule, and you say, but no, it didn't happen over here. Right. Oh, that means it's totally false.
Right.
No, it might be there's a margin of error, that happens. So getting people to understand veracity, the idea of truth, and how is truth established, and to what extent can it be used. I personally feel that some of the more physical things in our world are a boundary for me for not doing certain behaviors. Otherwise, I'm going to die.
Right.
So it's saying, what is veracity, meaning what is truth, and what is true for you. So when somebody says, is leadership made, or are they born?
Right.
I go, yep.
But I think part of the challenge is there's so much information out there.
I agree.
That you can't tell what's real or what isn't. And it would
It's going
take,
to get worse too.
I mean, you basically have to go get a doctorate and to try to understand all the information around actually knowing what objectively is happening.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
It's just going to get worse too.
Because I can't, and I don't take the time. I'm worried. Yeah. I'm reading about psychology. I don't really, honestly, I could care less about all this stuff.
Yeah.
It just drives me crazy. But
some of the stuff in psychology?
Politics.
The politics.
Oh, politics.
Stuff. Yeah. So I'm making my own assumptions, but it's, and it's based on bias stuff too. Like you watch Jimmy Kimmel and you're getting some of your information from him and Jon Stewart and whatever. They're taking only the worst of the worst videos.
Well, Jimmy doesn't do it quite the way Jon Stewart does it. Stewart takes the argument.
And he's more objective.
Yeah, he takes the argument and says, and then shows how they in certain ways they can't make that assertion.
Right. But Jimmy Kimmel's funnier.
Oh no!
Yeah, so
yeah,
I'll be honest. Like when I watch like Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert, because around elections, I can't watch them so much because I know they're funny. I agree with they're funny, but
yeah, it's funny.
But it's about for me, it's just it's a real serious.
You got to be careful getting your information from that any different than any of the other.
No, I think for me on a personal note, it's just like when they're making fun of something I found very serious, like our democracy, and then it just empowers Trump. When they make fun of Trump, they just empower him. That's how I see it. But Jon Stewart, I could listen to him all the time.
That's because he shows the contradictions in the arguments of the people on the other side.
Which Jordan Klepper does the same thing in a very
I like extreme way.
Yeah, I think that's
who did some of that in the very old days is George Carlin.
Yes,
oh yes,
George was fantastic.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
His whole bit about abortion rights is still plays today. It's really good. Where he talks about just you're only pro-life until the baby's born. it's brilliant. It still applies today. It's a great bit.
Well, on the last night where Jimmy Kimmel was making his jokes about Melania's book and how she's pro-choice.
Yeah.
And then he said something about she wants to even take it to the extreme to allow abortion of stepchildren. It shows the picture. That's pretty. That's just so off. It's off the wall.
The wall.
It's just funny.
It is fun.
Serious, but
when you think about some of those children that he has, yeah.
Anyways,
they're all quiet now.
Let's go to feedback.
Any last words on?
That was good. That was a good catch.
It's a
truth
in the election. Truth in the election.
Well, that's a podcast right there. Bro.
I do. I really think.
So we got to end it with a joke. We got to end it with a joke. We're going to do that. We're going to end this podcast.
I got my tree joke. Do you remember it?
Oh yes. You do. Do trees poop?
Yeah. Do they?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Where do you think they get number 2 pencils?
That's right. Got it.
Ka-ding. See, I got it. You only told me one.
That's great. All right, cool. So we'll pause and do you got another one. He's got another one.
Yeah. You know how you tell the difference between a snow woman and a snowman?
No, how do you tell it?
Snowballs.
Congrats! You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. We genuinely hope that you found value in our conversation. If you liked it, please click that like button below and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on our current episodes. And if you didn't like it, you can click the dislike button, but make sure you click it twice. We're eager to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts, questions, topic ideas, or if you're interested in our leadership training and consulting support. Leave us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. We're open to any and all feedback. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more insightful leadership discussion. Until next time.